Chapter 976, Soul-Splitting Technique. Zhao Feng gritted his teeth and took out a large amount of primal crystal stones in order to buy the soul-splitting technique. The elegant elder then handed over another book of light into Zhao Feng's hand. Wang. The contents inside the book of light soon merged into Zhao Feng's mind. Zhao Feng roughly scanned over it, and his expression instantly became ugly. He had been scammed by this elder. The soul-splitting technique and the 10,000 divine thoughts technique were indeed by the same author, but while it did contain some soul techniques, the soul-splitting technique was incomplete. However, what made Zhao Feng especially speechless was that the soul-splitting technique only had one level. Although it was incomplete, this was a bit too incomplete. Zhao Feng had been scammed, but the elder had never lied to Zhao Feng. One could only say that Zhao Feng underestimated this machine. At this instant, all the contents of the soul-splitting technique were in Zhao Feng's mind. It was impossible to return it. Zhao Feng now understood why the soul-splitting technique was cheaper than the 10,000 divine thoughts technique. Zhao Feng became angry and inspected the elegant elder in front of him. All businesses in the world, including ones run by machines, were indeed liars. The elder revealed an apologetic smile when he saw Zhao Feng's expression. Guest, although the soul-splitting technique is incomplete, it will be at least a peak heaven grade technique if you manage to complete it. Therefore, even though the soul-splitting technique only has one level, it's very cheap. Zhao Feng half doubted and half believed what the elder said. Since the soul-splitting technique only had one level, it was hard for Zhao Feng to analyze the rest even with his God's eye. However, Zhao Feng's eyes immediately shifted. Can the Divine Technique Palace complete the soul-splitting technique for me? If the soul-splitting technique was as the elder described and could reach the peak heaven grade, Zhao Feng was willing to buy an upgrade if the price was reasonable. After all, he had already bought the first level. The contents of the soul-splitting technique are unique, and we lack similar skills to compare it to. The Divine Technique Palace can complete it, but we can't guarantee its safety or its effect. Furthermore, the price would be a lot higher than the other soul-cultivating techniques. The elder thought for a while before replying. As soon as the elder finished speaking, Zhao Feng had already started to leave with the little thieving cat. Soul-cultivating techniques were already risky. If the Divine Technique Palace couldn't guarantee its safety, Zhao Feng obviously had to think it through extensively. One had to know that the soul-eye refining technique alone had cost Zhao Feng almost 30% of his total wealth. Zhao Feng would be crazy if he spent another 30% to buy a technique that he might not even be able to cultivate. Zhao Feng glanced at the little thieving cat after leaving the Divine Technique Palace. Meow meow. The little thieving cat revealed an innocent expression, as if saying that it didn't know anything. The divination result said that it was a good choice, which is why it supported Zhao Feng in buying the soul-splitting technique. Zhao Feng then went to the 10,000 Blood Palace after leaving the Divine Techniques Palace. The 10,000 Blood Palace was a place even more highly ranked than the Divine Techniques Palace. No one could resist the temptation of the bloodlines within the 10,000 Blood Palace. May I ask if you want to strengthen your bloodline or implant a bloodline? An elegant female constructed of blood-colored light smiled at Zhao Feng and the little thieving cat. I want to strengthen my bloodline to a bloodline of the 10,000 ancient races. Zhao Feng had been here before, so he was familiar with the abilities here. Sure, I'll first need to check your bloodline before strengthening it, the elegant female made of blood-colored light said with a smile. Zhao Feng then sat in front of a multi-armed machine. The multi-armed machine then extended a pointy needle and tube and stabbed into Zhao Feng's body. An unknown eye bloodline has been detected. Unable to be strengthened. Detected an ancient ice and water bloodline, a fire elemental bloodline, a blood-related bloodline, and genes of the ancient bloodline. The ancient ice and water bloodline is relatively weak, so it's best to strengthen the fire elemental or the blood-related bloodline. The bloodlines that they can be strengthened to are the lightning fire ancient dragon race, the fire god race, or the ancient blood race. Since you have a strong bloodline foundation and have genes of the ancient bloodline, the price is only 50% of the total amount. The elegant female revealed a weird expression as she told Zhao Feng the report. 50%? Zhao Feng was surprised. He remembered that he had only paid 10% of the total price to strengthen his bloodline to the mystic ice-scaled race in the other heaven's legacy city. This meant that Zhao Feng would have to pay 5 times as much compared to before. Zhao Feng then thought about the bloodlines that the elegant female mentioned. Almost all of them were ranked in the top 100 of the 10,000 ancient races, and they were much stronger than the mystic ice-scaled race bloodline. The lightning fire ancient dragon race and the fire god race were both in the top 50. Zhao Feng thought for a moment before understanding. His perfect blood devil sun bloodline was very strong even when compared to the 10,000 ancient races, which is why the rankings of the races he could upgrade to were so high. However, this meant that the price he would have to pay would be very high. How much does it cost to strengthen to the bloodline of the lightning fire ancient dragon bloodline? Zhao Feng hesitated for a while before asking. Before entering the city, Zhao Feng thought that he had countless resources and wouldn't be able to finish using them. Now he had to think and calculate carefully. The female pointed her finger, and a screen with information regarding the lightning fire ancient dragon bloodline as well as how pure Zhao Feng's bloodline would be appeared. At the very bottom of it was the price. In reality, with your unique fire elemental bloodline and foundation, you could upgrade your bloodline to the ancient golden crown race bloodline, which is ranked 9th. However, the 10,000 blood palace doesn't have that bloodline. If you have it, we can upgrade your bloodline for free. The female looked at the little thieving cat and said. Golden Crow race. Zhao Feng's heart shook. His perfect blood devil sun bloodline could indeed absorb the power of the ancient golden crow, but he never would have imagined that it could be upgraded to the genuine golden crow bloodline. However, how could Zhao Feng possibly have the bloodline of an ancient golden crow? As far as he knew, there seemed to be only one golden crow remaining in the fan universe, the sun. It was a terrifying race that even experts at the heavenly divine realm didn't dare to approach. This female was definitely joking with him. Right now, the lightning fire ancient dragon bloodline was the 10,000 ancient races bloodline that most suited Zhao Feng, but it was ranked 43rd, and the price to upgrade his bloodline was counted by substandard god crystals. Zhao Feng thought for a while. Even if he spent all his wealth within his misty spatial world, it still wouldn't be enough. At the very end, Zhao Feng didn't choose to strengthen his bloodline. Firstly, his 5 elemental wind lightning technique and golden kun sacred lightning body both still required a large amount of resources to cultivate. Secondly, Zhao Feng also wanted to make his own force. The resources required to maintain his own force easily surpassed the resources he needed for himself. Thirdly, Zhao Feng now had a large beast horde. Although he wasn't thinking about all of them, he at least wanted to raise some of them, such as the 5 poison distinct bees, the sky-shaking golden apes, and some others. Therefore, Zhao Feng couldn't spend everything on himself. Do you have any 10,000 ancient races bloodline that's suitable for sky-shaking golden apes? Zhao Feng asked. Even though he wasn't planning to strengthen his own bloodline, he could still strengthen the bloodlines of some of his pets, and the sky-shaking golden apes had huge potential. The female made of blood-colored light started to test the sky-shaking golden apes. The sky-shaking golden apes can be strengthened in 2 different aspects. One is speed and the other is power. The bloodlines can be. The elegant female gave Zhao Feng a simple summary, and a screen appeared before him. Strengthen it to the bloodline of the Power Force apes. Zhao Feng chose to strengthen the sky-shaking golden apes with power-type bloodlines. The Power Force apes bloodline could almost double the strength of the sky-shaking golden apes, and it increased their defense as well. It was ranked in the 400s among the 10,000 ancient races, so the price wasn't very high. Furthermore, since the sky-shaking golden apes were beasts from this dimension, they also had genes from the ancient race, meaning that the price could be discounted. 7 sky-shaking golden apes will need 7 days' time, the female said. Zhao Feng nodded his head and left the sky-shaking golden apes here as he prepared to leave. Zhao Feng. Shi Yulai entered the 10,000 blood palace and revealed a surprised expression. He didn't think that Zhao Feng would be so fast. The first place he had tried to find was the 10,000 blood palace, where he could import a bloodline or strengthen his existing bloodline. Zhao Feng, with your perfect blood devil sun bloodline, you shouldn't need to come here. Shi Yulai laughed. Zhao Feng's perfect blood devil sun bloodline was a bloodline that could be ranked within the top 10 of Imperial Dao bloodlines. I'm just strengthening my spiritual pet's bloodlines. Zhao Feng faintly shook his head. He actually really wanted the lightning fire ancient dragon bloodline, but alas. What? Strengthening the bloodline of your pets? Shi Yulai's mouth fell open. He had borrowed a lot of resources from his family to come here for himself, but even then, he might not have enough to strengthen his bloodline once. On the other hand, Zhao Feng was strengthening the bloodlines of his spiritual pets? However, it was most likely a normal bloodline. Shi Yulai felt a lot better when he thought about it like this. I'll be going around to some other places now. Zhao Feng said goodbye to Shi Yulai. Zhao Feng took out the map after leaving the 10,000 Blood Palace. We'll go to the Divine Herb Tower next. Most of the herbs and pills that Zhao Feng had obtained in the Imperial tombs weren't ones he needed. Furthermore, the little thieving cat also wanted to go to the Divine Herb Tower. The Divine Herb Tower was extremely big, even bigger than the 10,000 Blood Palace. They had every herb one needed, and they were all stored in different environments to maintain their good condition. Apart from pills and herbs, they also had medicinal liquid stored in half-transparent tubes. Guest, do you need herbs, medicine, or specially made items? A female maid of green light slowly walked over. You can make specific items? Zhao Feng was surprised, but he didn't need anything in this aspect. In the end, Zhao Feng traded many of his resources for those related to wind, lightning, and fire. Zhao Feng's left eye and his Blood Devil Sun bloodline could refine herbs extremely easily on their own. This meant that he didn't need to buy the more expensive pills or medicinal solutions. These should be enough for me to cultivate to the mystic light realm. Zhao Feng gave a faint smile. The little thieving cat bought many resources it needed as well. The Divine Herb Tower was indeed a great place. One could trade resources for resources without worrying about other fees. I still have some resources remaining. Maybe I can think about strengthening the skylocking bow. Chapter 977, Soul Tracking. Zhao Feng and the little thieving cat headed toward the forge once more after leaving the Divine Herb Tower. Zhao Feng saw Zhou Suer enter the Divine Herb Tower not long after he left, and Old Ying was in a bookstore. At this moment in time, everyone was finding their own fortune. What can I do for you? The dark-skinned male looked at Zhao Feng. Can you have a look at this weapon of mine? A dark silver bow with mysterious tadpole-like markings on it appeared in Zhao Feng's hand. This weapon is perfectly fine, and all of its aspects are top tier. There are many abilities that can be added to it, but since you specialize in the soul, not many abilities or effects will be very useful for you. The dark-skinned male closely inspected the skylocking bow. Zhao Feng's expression turned to surprise, and he admired this machine. The dark-skinned male had analyzed the forte of the user as well as the weapon. Zhao Feng cultivated many different elemental techniques. However, even if he gave the skylocking bow something related to wind, lightning, or fire, the overall increase in strength to the skylocking bow would be limited. Therefore, Zhao Feng wanted to give the skylocking bow some abilities regarding the soul. I suggest you give this weapon a soul tracking effect. It is extremely suitable for you. The dark-skinned male closely inspected Zhao Feng's left eye before saying this. Soul tracking? Zhao Feng paused for a moment. He could make some guesses, but he wasn't entirely sure what ability that would be from the name alone. Simply put, with soul tracking, you can use this bow to shoot and kill anyone you can sense with your soul. The dark-skinned blacksmith revealed a confident smile. Shoot and kill anyone I can sense with my soul? Zhao Feng was surprised. The skylocking bow already had the soul tracking ability. Even if the enemy had escaped very far away, he could still shoot them. However, the prerequisite was that Zhao Feng had to lock onto them with the skylocking bow first. The soul tracking that the dark-skinned blacksmith talked about meant that Zhao Feng just needed to leave a mark on someone with his eye bloodline. As long as Zhao Feng could sense the position of this mark, he could shoot them with his skylocking bow. For example, if Zhao Feng had left a mark with his god eye on Sacred Lord Black Demon, he could shoot him right now from inside the city. This method was rather easy, but also rather mysterious. That's right. Because this bow's targeting ability is already extremely unique, you can strengthen it to soul tracking. The dark-skinned blacksmith nodded his head and explained once more. Not all weapons could have this ability. It was only because the skylocking bow already had a powerful targeting ability that it was able to. Soul tracking was just upgrading the skylocking bow's original skill. Of course, the cost of this upgrade was still very expensive. Okay, I'll upgrade it. Zhao Feng decisively paid the amount. What the dark-skinned male said persuaded Zhao Feng. You can come back 2 days later to collect it. The dark-skinned male put the skylocking bow into a large black furnace and spoke. I also want some arrows that are suitable for this bow. Zhao Feng thought for a moment before continuing. At this point, The other fortune within the Heaven's Legacy City wasn't important anymore. If he was able to obtain some powerful arrows that were compatible with the sky-locking bow, it would become one of Zhao Feng's hidden cards on top of the God-slaying arrow. Even if Zhao Feng broke through to the Mystic Light Realm, he still might not be able to completely use the power of the God-slaying arrow. He barely managed to release the first arrow when killing the 9 Darkness Demonic Lord last time, and it almost killed him. The most important point though was that Zhao Feng only had 1 God-slaying arrow left. What kind of arrows do you need? You can give me a few simple requirements, and I can craft them perfectly. If you have a drawing or a blueprint of the arrow you want me to make, the price can be a bit cheaper, the dark-skinned male said excitedly. If there was a blueprint or an example of the weapon here, it would reduce the amount of time and effort needed, thus the lower price. Zhao Feng's expression became slightly grim. He obviously didn't have a blueprint or drawing, but he did have an arrow. Have a look at this. A scarlet golden arrow appeared in Zhao Feng's hand. The instant the God-slaying arrow appeared, a sharp metallic glow filled the area and caused the items within the forge to start trembling. However, this piercing aura only appeared in the forge, no one outside could sense it. Zhao Feng couldn't help but be shocked. It seemed like this forge was not simple, it could even block the power of a substandard god weapon. This is the God-slaying arrow. Red light shot out of the dark-skinned blacksmith's eyes. He obviously knew of such a famous substandard god weapon. I don't need more god-slaying arrows. I just want a few arrows based on it, but that are a bit weaker. Zhao Feng believed that the forge tower within a Heaven's Legacy City had the ability to create substandard god weapons, but Zhao Feng couldn't afford one. One had to know that, generally speaking, substandard god weapons were weapons that only demigods could control. Their value was immeasurable. Furthermore, the time that Zhao Feng was staying in the Heaven's Legacy City was limited. Making a substandard god weapon would probably take a lot of time. Sure. Please give the god-slaying arrow to me. I will first need to analyze the structure and make a blueprint of this weapon. It might take a while. The dark-skinned blacksmith looked at Zhao Feng solemnly. Okay. Zhao Feng didn't hesitate at all. He definitely wouldn't agree to handing over the god-slaying arrow in the outside world. Zhao Feng wouldn't have even taken it out in the first place. However, this was a Heaven's Legacy City run by automatons. The dark-skinned blacksmith took the god-slaying arrow and led Zhao Feng to the 10th floor where he put the arrow into a complex compartment. 4 hours later, the dark-skinned blacksmith took out the god-slaying arrow and handed it back to Zhao Feng. He then pointed his finger into the air, and a screen instantly appeared. Please have a look. According to the structure of the god-slaying arrow, there are a few types of arrow that can be made. Zhao Feng's eyes instantly scanned over the screen. There were 26 drawings of an arrow on the screen, ranging from normal emperor-level arrows to the god-slaying arrow itself. As I thought, they can even make the god-slaying arrow. Zhao Feng took a deep breath and continued to read through the descriptions. These 26 types of arrow were all one-time use items, and since Zhao Feng had provided the god-slaying arrow as well, the price was relatively cheap. In the end, Zhao Feng finally chose 3 arrows. The amount of primal crystal stones and materials he paid was greater than the total wealth of a late-stage sacred lord's inheritance. You can come back 2 days later to collect the arrows and the bow. The dark-skinned male revealed a joyful smile. Zhao Feng headed toward the city wall after leaving the forge. There were more than a dozen rooms here, but no one else had returned yet. Zhao Feng chose a room close to the side and opened the protective ray around it. The little thieving cat jumped into the misty spatial world. It had gained a lot from the Heaven's Legacy City as well. I'll first have a look at the soul-splitting technique. Zhao Feng still hoped that he could make use of this incomplete technique. After all, the elder from the Divine Techniques Palace had given this technique a good rating. If what the elder said was true, this soul-splitting technique was different from other soul-based secret techniques. Zhao Feng spent some time and read through the soul-splitting technique. This technique is indeed very interesting. Zhao Feng was completely absorbed by the contents. The 10,000 Divine Thoughts technique trained one to split their mind, and the soul-splitting technique tried to split the soul. Zhao Feng had never seen an idea similar to this even in the demigod Forgotten Garden or Xie Yang Palace, but the idea made his eyes light up. However, there was only one level in the soul-splitting technique. Only a part of the second level had been written. There was also a warning written on it by the author: from the experience of others, anyone whose soul isn't strong enough will find it difficult to cultivate the first level. Zhao Feng was speechless. In other words, no one had ever succeeded cultivating the first level. Zhao Feng even had a suspicion that the author died after trying to cultivate the soul-splitting technique themselves. Looks like I'll have to put the soul-splitting technique on hold. Maybe when I'm stronger, I'll be able to complete this technique. Zhao Feng liked the idea of this technique, but it was a little dangerous at the moment. After putting away the soul-splitting technique, Zhao Feng then merged his consciousness into the soul-eye refining technique. The soul-eye refining technique was one of the eye-stealing techniques with the highest rate of success. While learning about the soul-eye refining technique, Zhao Feng also circulated the 10,000 divine thoughts technique and used the power of the God Tribulation Lightning to get rid of the death intent within the eye of death. Half a day later. This seems pretty simple. I can start it already. Zhao Feng could completely understand the soul-eye refining technique. This secret technique required the user to utilize their soul and slowly refine the eye until the characteristics of the eye changed. The closer the cultivation between the user and the eye, the easier it was to refine. When the characteristics of the soul eye were halfway compatible with the user's soul, they could try to assimilate it. Luckily, the Emperor of Death was a quasi-sacred lord, so the level of this eye of death was almost the same as Zhao Feng. I can start refining it now. Zhao Feng merged his consciousness into the dimension of his left eye. The eye of death floated quietly above the mysterious golden ball. Zhao Feng had already forced out all the death intent within it. Zhao Feng then used the soul eye refining technique and transformed his eye intent into a unique soul flame to slowly refine the eye of death. A day's time soon passed, and all of the members of the 9th Prince's team had spent almost all their savings. Everyone regretted not conquering a few more inheritances. Shen Qitze bought an extremely profound array from the array tower and set it up outside the city wall. Zhao Feng opened his eyes on the second day. I didn't think that everything would progress so smoothly. Zhao Feng was pretty surprised. In just 2 days' time, he realized that the eye of death was already 50% compatible with him. This meant that Zhao Feng could prepare for the next step. Chapter 978, Repulsion. In just 2 days' time, the eye of death was already 50% compatible with him. This speed surpassed what Zhao Feng had imagined. Who? Zhao Feng's figure disappeared from the metallic room and entered the little world of the misty spatial world. Wang tilde. A ripple of water appeared in front of Zhao Feng's eyes, and the black eye of death floated out. Unfortunately, I don't specialize in the laws of death. Zhao Feng sighed. The eye of death was, without a doubt, a powerful inheritance of the 8 great god eyes. It countered all living beings, including souls. In particular, soul-based eye bloodline techniques would become extremely powerful when used through the eyes of death. However, the prerequisite was that the holder had to reach a certain amount of understanding in the laws of death. Zhao Feng had merged with God Tribulation Lightning, so he knew a little about the laws of destruction, so the eye of destruction was more suitable for Zhao Feng. However, Zhao Feng wasn't willing to just throw away this eye of death. I should merge it into my right eye. Zhao Feng came to a conclusion. His left eye already had the god's spiritual eye, and he had no idea what would happen if he merged the eye of death with his left eye. Zhao Feng would rather destroy the eye of death and return it to the Emperor of Death than risk an accident happening to his god eye. After all, it was the god's spiritual eye that had changed his destiny and matured with him. Let's start. Zhao Feng's expression became serious as he released a surge of powerful soul intent, covered the eye of death, and merged it into his body. He then slowly moved it toward the position of his right eye. Merge. A wave of soul power appeared and turned into a gray-purple flame, just as the soul eye refining technique said. Zhao Feng was going to refine the eye of death with his own soul so the two would have properties in common. This would allow him to merge the eye of death into his soul. Once he succeeded, all he needed to do was proceed according to the soul eye refining technique and refine the eye of death over time. The two would completely merge with one another very soon. At that point in time, the eye of death would be Zhao Feng's. Wang. The eye of death appeared at the position of Zhao Feng's right eye, and a great purple flame burned at the same place as well. The flames burned across his soul, causing him to feel as if he had entered a sea of hellfire. The searing pain traveled from the position of his right eye to his entire body. Zhao Feng's body shook and sweat poured over his body, but he gritted his teeth and held on. Slowly but steadily, the right eye and Zhao Feng's soul was pushed back. At the same time, he realized that the color around the eye of death started to change. Wisps of dark purple light could be seen. According to the soul eye refining technique, this usually needed at least 3 days to happen, but it appeared after just 4 hours of refining the eye of death. This seems pretty easy. Zhao Feng was happy. From the looks of it, he was destined to be one with powerful bloodlines. This process also reduced the duration of the pain he was feeling in his soul. At this instant, the color around the eye of death was already extremely close to the color of Zhao Feng's own soul. Good. Zhao Feng started to circulate his technique and directed his soul to merge with the eye of death. Peng. Peng. Zhao Feng's left eye suddenly started to twitch, and part of its sleeping power was awakened. Boom. The god's spiritual eye released a forceful aura that looked down on the universe, and this powerful surge of aura circulated once around Zhao Feng's soul. When this aura touched the eye of death, which was currently merging with him, Zhao Feng's entire soul started to shake, and it released a wave of ancient aura that repelled everything not belonging to Zhao Feng. What? The god's spiritual eye is repelling the eye of death? Zhao Feng's heart jumped as sweat poured down from him like rain. The god's spiritual eye had done the unexpected at the critical moment. The god's spiritual eye gave Zhao Feng a feeling that it was marking its territory by repelling the soul eye that was trying to merge with him. Wang Wang. The eye of death that was merging with Zhao Feng suddenly started to tremble when it felt this wave of desolate aura, and it tried to struggle out of Zhao Feng's soul. No. Maybe it's because the god's spiritual eye thinks that the eye of death is too low-leveled? Zhao Feng inspected the feeling. After sensing the existence of Zhao Feng's left eye, the eye of death trembled and tried to escape from Zhao Feng's soul. It was as if it didn't dare to exist within the same soul as the god's spiritual eye. However, this incident showed that Zhao Feng's god's spiritual eye did indeed have the potential to be the 9th god's eye, otherwise why would the descendant of one of the 8 great god eyes bow down to the god's spiritual eye? It would have fought back instead. Not good, an accident is happening to the eye of death. While Zhao Feng was thinking, the eye of death started to become chaotic, and it radiated an uneasy aura. Absorb. Zhao Feng's left eye locked onto the eye of death and put it into the dimension of his left eye. Who? After entering the dimension of Zhao Feng's left eye, the eye of death was completely suppressed. At the same instant, the god's spiritual eye calmed down, and the terrifying desolate aura faded away from Zhao Feng's soul. Who? So close. Zhao Feng let out a breath. He had wasted 2 days' time to almost destroy the eye of death. One had to know that, if the eye of death was destroyed, it would return to the Emperor of Death. I didn't expect this would happen. Zhao Feng's eyebrows locked together. This meant that the wealth he had spent in the Divine Techniques Palace had gone to waste. There was only one level in the soul-splitting technique, and he wasn't sure if he could even cultivate it. Now, the eye of death was repelled by the god's spiritual eye and couldn't merge into Zhao Feng's soul, which meant that the soul eye refining technique was useless too. I'll have to put it down for now. Zhao Feng couldn't think of anything he could do right now. He didn't specialize in the laws of death anyway, so he wasn't too frustrated about it. On the second day, Zhao Feng left the room and headed toward the Forge Tower. The dark-skinned male handed over the 3 completed arrows and the sky-locking bow to Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng took the sky-locking bow and could feel a weird structure within it. His soul intent could now merge into the sky-locking bow better than before, which meant that he could use more of its power. The 3 arrows consisted of 2 dark golden arrows and 1 bright golden arrow. They each radiated a piercing aura and had similar carvings to the god-slaying arrow. You will need to spend some time to refine this bow with your soul power in order to properly use the soul tracking ability, the dark-skinned blacksmith smiled and said. Zhao Feng then returned to the metallic room and started to cultivate. Luckily, the skylocking bow has been successfully strengthened, and the arrows have been perfectly crafted. Zhao Feng felt a bit better. He then circulated the 10,000 divine thoughts technique and refined the bow with his soul power, while also preparing to break through to the rank of emperor. The strength of his soul surpassed his cultivation by too much and was actually slowing down his progress, but his foundation was extremely strong. Zhao Feng then took out some wind, lightning, and fire elemental resources and started to absorb the essence within them. A day later, an enormous green, blue, and red whirlpool of wind lightning appeared above the room that Zhao Feng was staying in. Wang boom, boom. The aura radiating from the whirlpool became more and more chaotic. The water, wood, and fire of wind lightning started to spin limitlessly. The thick heaven and earth yuan qi and some ancient aura was sucked into it. Zhao Feng held rare resources in his hand, and countless pure energy with the elements of wind, lightning, and fire entered the true Yuan dimension of Zhao Feng's body. Zhao Feng's breaking through? Shi Yulai, who was in the next room, was startled by the scene that Zhao Feng caused. The ninth prince and the other members of the team also walked over and sighed in their hearts. Such a profound wind-lightning technique, and it also seems to contain other elements. Jing Kai felt extremely pressured. The quality and quantity of Zhao Feng's true Yuan surpasses normal emperors. Breaking through should be extremely easy. Old Ying could sense how strong Zhao Feng's foundation was. Not good. This is the last day of the second stage. Old Ying suddenly realized something. There's someone coming. A light flashed through Su Qingling's eyes as she spoke. Go to the city wall. Old Ying roared as his expression turned ugly. Zhao Feng breaking through had come at exactly the wrong time. The 7th Prince's team and the other 3 princes knew that Zhao Feng was the main supporter of the 9th Prince's team. They could obviously feel the power of Zhao Feng breaking through. Zhao Feng's beast horde was still on the city walls, but without a beast tamer personally controlling them, their battle power would be reduced by almost 40%. Furthermore, Zhao Feng's sky-shaking golden apes were still being strengthened in the 10,000 Blood Palace and couldn't participate in the battle at all. Zhao Feng. What do we do? Complex emotions flashed through Su Qingling's eyes. Don't worry about him. Shenqitsa, control the array with all your power. Old Ying had a decisive expression as he looked outside the city. A wave of beasts was slowly approaching. Behind them was close to 30 experts. Quickly, come. Grandmaster Zhang, direct your beasts, the 5th prince urged. Zhao Feng's breaking through right now and won't finish in such a short amount of time. We just need to finish off the other members. The second we take over this Heaven's Legacy City, victory is ours. The 12th prince was overjoyed. This is the last day in the second stage. Use our time wisely. The 2nd prince roared as light flashed through his eyes. The combined forces of the 3 princes were the attackers. The last day of attacking the cities was usually the fiercest. As long as a prince imprinted their pseudo-crown prince seal down in the slot, the Heaven's Legacy City would be automatically closed for a day. Since the next day would be the end of the second stage, they wouldn't need to worry about anyone else attacking them. Chapter 979, Turning the Tide. Defend with full power. Old Ying urgently ordered. The other members stood within Shenqitsa's defensive array and started to defend. Luckily, the beast horde still listened to the last order given by Zhao Feng and guarded the city. When the combined forces of the 3 princes attacked, they still fought back. However, without the direction of a beast tamer, their battle power was heavily reduced. Since the beasts weren't controlled by a beast tamer, they rushed out of the defensive array. Old Ying, these beasts aren't under our control. Shi Yulai felt helpless when he saw this. Luckily, the beasts learned to stay within the defensive array after losing several times. Defend as long as we can. Old Ying's tone was decisive. Looks like Zhao Feng really is trying to break through. The 2nd prince, who wasn't far away from the city, scratched his chin. The scenery of breaking through could be faked, so it could have been a trick to make the enemy appear. All of you can attack now. The 2nd prince sent the order down after confirming Zhao Feng was truly in seclusion. Attack. The 12th prince was very excited. Whoosh. Almost 30 experts from the 3 princes' teams flew into the air and charged toward the 9th prince's city. Brother 2nd prince, don't forget about the blood pact we made. The 5th prince had a grim expression. Since only one prince could enter at a time after taking over a Heaven's Legacy City, and there was only 1 day left in the second stage, it was impossible for the 3 princes to take turns in the Heaven's Legacy City. Therefore, the 3 of them had signed a blood pact. The blood pact was something created by the Heaven's Legacy race, and it was extremely rare. They would only be used under extreme circumstances. The contents of the blood pact were as follows: after the 2nd prince entered the Heaven's Legacy City, he must buy everything the other princes and their subordinates wanted without embezzling anything. Of course. The 2nd prince had a calm expression. This was their final chance. Everything could be done as long as he was able to enter the Heaven's Legacy City. Keep an eye on brother 7th prince as well. Once his team comes, use your draconic providence to stall them. The 2nd prince's expression remained the same as he messaged the other 2 princes. The 7th Prince's team huddled around in a small forest about 100 miles away from the Heaven's Legacy City. We don't have the ability to take down a city by ourselves. We can only wait until the 3 princes and the 9th prince injure each other before we can take action, the scholar analyzed. Sacred Lord Dark Soul's body and soul had been heavily injured by Zhao Feng. While it was easy to recover the injuries to his sacred body, the damage caused by the God Tribulation lightning to his soul wasn't. On top of that, Grandmaster Zhang Yi's beasts had been heavily damaged as well. If Zhao Feng doesn't come out of seclusion, then the 3 princes should be able to break through the city very easily. What will we do then? Zhang Hao asked. While the individual strength of the 3 princes' teams was weak, they had the advantage in numbers. If the 7th prince fought against the 3 princes, the 3 princes had a higher chance of winning. The other members also looked at the scholar. They had this question as well. If you were in Zhao Feng's place, would you choose to break through right now? The scholar asked with a meaningful gaze. Everyone went silent. As long as they weren't an idiot, no one would choose to break through at such a critical moment. Zhao Feng shouldn't need very long to break through, Sacred Lord Sharp Edge said. One could tell how strong Zhao Feng's foundation was from his display of strength earlier. Sacred Lord Sharp Edge was even suspicious that Zhao Feng was purposely suppressing his cultivation. In that situation, he wouldn't need very long at all, especially if he was experienced. Then we still have hope, Lu Tianqi immediately said. As long as the 9th prince fought against the 3 princes with full power, there was the possibility of both sides being heavily injured. Elsewhere, after the 9th prince took over a city, the pressure on the 8th prince instantly decreased. He's finally going to become an emperor now. Yu Tianao felt the bloodline within his body tremble after thinking about this. Although he knew that Zhao Feng was already incredibly strong even as a king, Yu Tianao wished for Zhao Feng to be at the same cultivation as himself when they fought. I think that Zhao Feng is purposely choosing to break through at this moment. He probably wants to test out what he obtained in the Heaven's Legacy City. Sacred Lord Hundred Refined smiled faintly. He didn't believe Zhao Feng would be so dumb as to break through at this instant without some kind of reassurance. In the metallic room beneath the whirlpool of wind lightning, although Zhao Feng was indeed breaking through, he had split part of his consciousness to spectate the battle outside the city wall while another part of his energy was refining the sky-locking bow. Refinement success. Zhao Feng's heart moved. At this instant, there was a hidden connection between Zhao Feng's soul intent and the sky-locking bow. At the same time, the whirlpool of wind lightning above Zhao Feng's room quickly started to fade away. With Zhao Feng's strong foundation and many precious resources, it was extremely easy for him to become an emperor. The 3 different areas of True Yuan within his True Yuan dimension became purer, and they spun around like a storm. Then, Zhao Feng's aura soon stabilized. There was no dramatic increase in strength after breaking through to the emperor rank. Only the quality and quantity of his True Yuan had increased. The quality of Zhao Feng's True Yuan was originally comparable to a quasi-sacred lord, and now it easily surpassed quasi-sacred lords. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call it the strongest True Yuan. When one became a sacred lord, their True Yuan would transform into mystic light sacred power. Meow meow. At this moment, the little thieving cat appeared in front of Zhao Feng and gave the misty spatial world to him. Whoosh. After equipping the misty spatial world, Zhao Feng turned into a streak of light and charged out. On the metallic city walls, countless beasts and nearly 30 peerless emperors and quasi-sacred lords crushed over. The array that Shenshitsu controlled had used up all its energy and shattered with a crack. In the 9th Prince's team, Su Qingling was already injured and was being healed by Zhou Suer. Shi Yulai gripped the giant dark yellow shield and headed in front of himself. However, it wasn't very effective since there were simply too many enemies. Zhao Feng's huge horde of beasts sustained heavy casualties against the other 3 beast tamers' hordes. The 9th Prince raised the faint pseudo-crown prince seal and was about to release his draconic providence. I'm late, Zhao Feng's voice sounded in everyone's soul. The 9th Prince instantly put away the pseudo-crown prince seal, and everyone else also let out a breath. They had been guarding this place to stall for time until Zhao Feng finished his breakthrough. Zhao Feng, quickly control the beast horde. Old Ying's expression turned to joy as he quickly spoke. The speed of Zhao Feng's breakthrough had exceeded his expectations, but now wasn't the time. As long as Zhao Feng regained control of the beast horde and unleashed his power, they had hope of successfully guarding the Heaven's Legacy City. Zhao Feng, it doesn't matter if you've broken through now. We're all already here. Shui Yuan laughed. The forces of the three princes had arrived on top of the metallic city walls, and the members of the 9th Prince's team had heavy injuries. Could Zhao Feng alone fight back against almost 30 emperors and quasi-sacred lords? Humph, I just have to make all of you leave. Zhao Feng harumphed coldly as his expression turned cold. Who? Zhao Feng waved his left hand, and the cloud silkworm Saint Butterfly appeared. The terrifying 10,000 ancient race bloodline made the emperor's heart shake, and it suppressed their bloodlines. They found it hard to even breathe. Before anyone could even react, the cloud silkworm Saint Butterfly opened its mouth and spat out a 5-colored silk that instant covered everything within several hundred yards. How absurd. How could the cloud silkworm Saint Butterfly's silk possibly restrain all of us? An emperor couldn't help but mock Zhao Feng's dumb actions. Almost 30 people charged at Zhao Feng and the rest of the 9th Prince's team. Since the cloud silkworm Saint Butterfly's silk was too spread out, no one was caught at all. The experts that felt silk land on them released their true yuan and just shook it off. However, the cloud silkworm Saint Butterfly then started to flutter its little wings, and a half-transparent rainbow-colored pollen formed a whirlwind and swept across everything within range of several hundred yards. Zhao Feng originally just wanted the silk to attract the enemy's attention. Only then would the dream pollen be effective. After all, everyone knew that Zhao Feng had the cloud silkworm Saint Butterfly, so they would be on guard against it. Zhao Feng had already messaged the other members of the 9th Prince's team to leave the range of the dream pollen attack. Not good. Retreat. It's the dream pollen. Dream pollen could pass through the physical dimension, and it was effective even against sacred lords. Its supportive abilities were even better than the silk. The 30-some members instantly started to panic against the dream pollen and could only run around. Luckily for them, not many people lost the ability to fight because of the dream pollen. However, Zhao Feng used this time to circulate the 10,000 divine thoughts technique and split off almost 1,000 thoughts, which he then merged into the beasts below. Zhao Feng's beast horde below the city wall instantly started to counterattack. With Zhao Feng's precise control, he quickly defeated the enemy beasts and directed some of them to block the emperor experts on the city wall. The 9th Prince and the other members instantly felt their pressure decrease. Every time Zhao Feng took action, it was to prepare for the next step. In just a couple breaths, he had gained control of the situation and started to turn the tide. I bet all of you want to come out and cause some destruction, right? Zhao Feng murmured as he waved his left hand once more. Boom. 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 3 giant golden figures descended onto the city wall, as if they were all giant metal mountains. The unparalleled and fierce aura of deadly beasts shook the hearts of anyone nearby and made them immediately retreat. Bam! The golden fur of the 3 sky-shaking golden apes stood up on end like needles, and they unleashed a desolate aura. Some of the nearby emperors were caught off guard and coughed out blood after being shaken by this terrifying bloodline aura. Some of the emperors further away started to panic as they felt their bloodlines tremble uneasily. They're beasts from this ancient dimension, and they have a bloodline of the 10,000 ancient races. How is this possible? Zhao Feng gave his spiritual pets such a precious bloodline? The emperors and quasi-sacred lords attacking the city were stunned. One had to know that each of the beasts in this dimension had ancient genes in their bloodline. Once they obtained a bloodline from the 10,000 ancient races, their power would be almost comparable to the 10,000 ancient races species themselves. Zhao Feng looked at the 3 sky-shaking golden apes and was extremely satisfied with them. When Zhao Feng was breaking through, the little thieving cat took the misty spatial world to the 10,000 blood palace and retrieved the sky-shaking golden apes that were finished being strengthened. Since time was limited, only 3 sky-shaking golden apes had been strengthened so far. Chapter 980, The Power of One. The other members of the 9th Prince's team were also stunned. They felt that they lacked resources after entering the Heaven's Legacy City. They could only look at many things since they weren't able to afford them. On the other hand, Zhao Feng had actually given his spiritual pets such precious bloodlines. Zhao Feng strengthened the bloodlines of the sky-shaking golden apes? Shi Yulai had a dazed expression. He had seen Zhao Feng in the 10,000 blood palace, but he thought that Zhao Feng was just giving his spiritual pets a normal bloodline. After inspecting the changes in the sky-shaking golden apes, it was obvious that they were given the Power Force Ape bloodline, which was ranked 421st among the 10,000 ancient races. After seeing them, the enemies even had the idea to capture these sky-shaking golden apes alive. The eyes of the three beast tamers were fiery hot as they looked at the sky-shaking golden apes. Go! Zhao Feng split off 3 parts of his consciousness and put them into the sky-shaking golden apes' bodies. The sky-shaking golden apes were very big, and they specialized in power and defense. They were quite suitable for defending the city. Wu tilde. The sky-shaking golden apes instantly roared and beat their scarlet golden fists. Limitless physical power formed a mirage of punches that swept over everything. The emperors and quasi-sacred lords that were charging forward had to retreat and dodge the attacks. Boom. Zhao Feng circulated his sacred lightning body and charged into the battlefield as the scarlet wings of wind lightning behind him fluttered. Those in the 9th Prince's team that could still fight followed Zhao Feng's footsteps and entered the battlefield once more. Scarlet lightning storm. The wings behind Zhao Feng fluttered wildly, and limitless wind lightning Tru Yuan poured out and formed a large storm of scarlet lightning. A blazing blood-colored light within the storm of scarlet lightning shot out. It was as if the sun had become the color of blood. The Blood Devil Sun Bloodline and the fire of wind lightning were 2 similarly explosive powers, and they merged into the storm together. Hu tilde boom. Boom. Lightning instantly crackled within the scarlet-colored storm, and a blazing blood-colored light covered its surface, increasing its power by several times as it covered many enemies. The quality and quantity of Zhao Feng's Tru Yuan weren't something that his past self could compare to. While this wide-ranged attack wasn't very profound, it utilized the advantage of Zhao Feng's most powerful Tru Yuan. What terrifying Tru Yuan and explosive power! The characteristics of the Blood Devil Sun Bloodline are contained within this storm. This definitely isn't the Tru Yuan a new emperor can have. The emperors and quasi-sacred lord covered by the storm of scarlet lightning instantly circulated their Tru Yuan to resist the power. One had to know that a wide-ranged attack would use up a lot of Tru Yuan, and this move was covering everyone. Quick, team up and finish off Zhao Feng. He's the beast tamer. If we defeat him, the battle power of these 3 sky-shaking golden apes will decrease dramatically. He's coming out to us. Everyone, attack. Shui Yuan, the goateed elder, and various others knew how strong Zhao Feng was, but they had almost 30 people. The majority of them were emperors and quasi-sacred lords, and they all straight toward Zhao Feng. Of course, most of this group was comprised of emperors. Quasi-sacred lords were rare amongst the lower-ranked princes. Not good, they're going to attack Zhao Feng together. Shi Yulai's expression turned to surprise, and he felt that Zhao Feng was acting too rashly. Quick, support Zhao Feng. Su Qingling swiped her hand, and a soul talisman instantly appeared. The soul talisman then turned into several soul arrows that shot toward the enemy. Zhou Suer had an impatient expression, but there was nothing she could do except heal the injured beasts from the back. They didn't know why Zhao Feng entered the battlefield so rashly. As long as he just controlled the beast horde and focused on defense, they had a possibility to turn the fight around. Although Zhao Feng's strength was comparable to a sacred lord, there were just too many enemies. Most of them were elite emperors and quasi-sacred lords. Even true sacred lords would have to retreat. This is Zhao Feng's plan. Jing Kai, who had been enslaved by Zhao Feng, didn't move. He looked at Zhao Feng with awe and respect. A faint smile appeared on Zhao Feng's face as a desolate and chaotic power of lightning spread from his back and merged into the air. Everything within several hundred yards instantly became a dark dimension filled with wind lightning. Even a portion of the ancient dimension's laws were now controlled by Zhao Feng. It was difficult for Zhao Feng's little world to cover a lot of people at once, so he wanted to limit its range to increase its power. Therefore, he had to come out and be the bait. More than a dozen emperors and quasi-sacred lords that were charging toward Zhao Feng instantly entered Zhao Feng's little world of wind lightning. The invisible laws in the dimension suddenly strengthened once more, and the terrifying pressure of wind lightning suddenly descended. More than a dozen enemies that were charging over instantly became covered by the power of the little world. The closer they got to Zhao Feng, the stronger the pressure. This is a little world? Didn't he only just become an emperor? How is this possible? His little world can actually merge perfectly into this ancient dimension? Zhao Feng can actually control part of the laws in this ancient dimension? The experts trapped by Zhao Feng's little world were stunned, and they were unable to calm down. Right now, it was as if they were traveling through mud, and they had to bear even more pressure from the ancient dimension. The ancient dimension already heavily suppressed the strength of outsiders. Now that Zhao Feng was actively controlling a part of the ancient dimension's laws, this pressure was even stronger. Many quasi-sacred lords released their little worlds as well and prepared to destroy Zhao Feng's little world. However, the most they could do was protect themselves a bit. Putting aside affecting Zhao Feng's little world, they couldn't even merge their little worlds into this dimension. At the same time, countless bolts of lightning descended from the little world of wind lightning. They still had to pay attention and block them. Quick, destroy Zhao Feng's little world together. The goateed elder roared. The power of Zhao Feng's little world within the ancient dimension was extremely strong. More than a dozen emperors and quasi-sacred lords prepared to release their attacks. However, Zhao Feng suddenly punched out several times and released several scarlet lightning fists. The power of his attacks was doubled in his little world. On top of that, the scarlet lightning punches that he used against these enemies trapped in his little world contained his sold-out domain and illusions. At the same time, the cloud silkworm Saint Butterfly flapped its wings once more, and a wave of half-transparent pollen formed a whirlwind and swept across several hundred yards. The pressure of the little world, the dream pollen, and Zhao Feng's illusion-mazed domain made the goateed elder, Shui Yuan, and company who were trapped in the little world feel tired and unable to move as they wished. Their attacks went wide and didn't concentrate on the same spot, so they didn't do much damage to Zhao Feng's little world. Hand over your dragon jades or don't blame me for being disrespectful. Zhao Feng released his soul intent, and his voice boomed throughout the little world of wind lightning. Everyone felt as if 10,000 bolts of lightning struck their soul. Their bodies became numb, and their souls were numbed as well along with a searing pain. What powerful soul intent! We can't get out. How is this possible? Shui Yuan, the goateed elder and company were full of fear and panic. More than a dozen emperors and quasi-sacred lords were completely trapped by Zhao Feng's little world, sold-out illusions, dream pollen, and soul intent. The enemies near the borders of Zhao Feng's little world, who were still fighting with the Ninth Prince's team and the sky-shaking golden apes, were instantly stunned. Zhao Feng had trapped over half of their force by himself. Even sacred lords couldn't do this. Zhao Feng, didn't you just become an emperor? You managed to form a little world already? Xiulai was dazed as he looked at Zhao Feng, who was like the god of heaven and earth in the little world of wind lightning. Furthermore, this little world of Zhao Feng's was no ordinary little world. He managed to stall more than a dozen emperors and quasi-sacred lords? Su Qingling had an incredulous expression while standing at the back. On top of that, Zhao Feng still had the ability to extort these enemies that he had trapped. Great. Old Ying couldn't help but cheer. When Zhao Feng decided to break through, Old Ying was already pondering about whether or not Zhao Feng had some kind of plan. From the looks of it, Zhao Feng wanted to obtain some more draconic providence for the Ninth Prince before the second stage ended. The emperors and quasi-sacred lords, who had their battle power suppressed within the little world of wind lightning, had enraged expressions. They hadn't gone out of their way to collect draconic providence, and now that the second stage of the Crown Prince trial was coming to an end, the dragon jades weren't very useful to them. Even if they could enter the Heaven's Legacy City, the princes they supported had no intention of fighting for the position of Crown Prince anyway. However, countless people were watching them get trapped and threatened by Zhao Feng alone. If they all just gave in to Zhao Feng and handed over their dragon jades, how would they live the rest of their days in the Great Gon Lord dynasty? Humph. Zhao Feng, we won't hand over the dragon jades. If you have the ability, then kill all of us. The experts that Zhao Feng had trapped refused to hand over their dragon jades. They all came from different forces and were sure that Zhao Feng wouldn't dare to suddenly offend a dozen powerful forces of the Lord dynasty. Eh? Where did my dragon jade go? My dragon jade has disappeared as well. My dragon jade and some precious resources within my interspatial dimension have disappeared. The experts within the little world of wind lightning exclaimed. Meow meow. A silver blur flashed next to Zhao Feng, and the little thieving cat handed over a bunch of dragon jades to Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng was speechless. All he wanted the little thieving cat to do was steal some dragon jades, but the little thieving cat even entered their interspatial dimensions and taken some treasures as well. Meow meow. The little thieving cat waved its paws at Zhao Feng, as if saying that these were its spoils of war. Zhao Feng gave a helpless smile. When Zhao Feng used his illusions and the dream pollen, he gave the little thieving cat the order to take action. That was when the enemy was least on guard, most helpless, and had the weakest senses. To make sure that the little thieving cat progressed smoothly, Zhao Feng even released his soul intent to attack everyone's soul, but from the looks of it, that was overdoing it. At this instant, the spectating three princes had ugly expressions. The situation that had been looking good suddenly turned around just like that. "Let's attack as well," the second prince's deep voice sounded. If the three of them didn't take action, they would definitely lose this battle. "Okay, we'll block the members of the ninth prince's team. Brother second prince, you go into the city and imprint your pseudo-crown prince seal." The fifth prince instantly took out his bright pseudo-crown prince seal. "Who?" Dragons made of light surrounded the three princes as they finally took action and headed toward the metallic city while holding their pseudo-crown prince seals in their hands.